was a nippy autumn evening, the kind that sneaks in while you're busy with dinner. Leaves danced on the sidewalk, painting the world outside in shades of orange and brown. Inside, the Thornton family gathered around the table, laughter floating through the air like warmth from the stove. Dinner was almost over when a sharp, sudden scratching sound broke the calm. A sound that didn't belong to the familiar creaks of an old house or the chatter of a lively family. Whispered Lily, the youngest, her eyes wide with curiosity. Tom, her older brother, looked up, brow furrowing. Probably just the wind, sis. But the scratching persisted, each scrape sharper and more desperate than the last. Mom exchanged a glance with Dad, both sensing that something tugged at their instincts. "Why don't we check it out? Just to be sure," Dad said, his voice steady, masking the small clench of unease in his stomach. Reluctantly, the family left the warmth of the table, the dessert waiting patiently, uncertainty hanging thick in the air. They shuffled to the door, the scratching becoming more frantic, almost pleading. Dad reached for the doorknob and paused for a breath. What could possibly be outside at this hour? With a gentle tug, the door creaked open. The sight before them was both shocking and surreal. A small dog stood there, soaked to the bone, shivering with fear and cold. Its legs trembled as it looked up at them with wide, frightened eyes that seemed to speak volumes. "Oh my God," Lily gasped, her heart racing at the sight. "It looks lost," Mom said, stepping toward the entrance. But before she could say anything more, the little dog took a hesitant step forward, its body language screaming need. The family watched, frozen for a moment in a blend of compassion and concern, when suddenly the dog's whole demeanor shifted. It stepped closer, inching its way over the threshold into the warmth and safety of the home. Instinctively, they all took a step back, and the dog followed, its eyes darting from one face to another as if searching for safety. "Wait, we can't just let it in," Dad said, doubt creeping into his voice. Lily argued, her heart fully on the side of the trembling creature before them. "Look at it." Okay, Dad relented. "Let's just let it in for a moment." As the family ushered the dog inside, its body relaxed slightly, the fear still evident but mingling with a flicker of trust. The family's familiarity of home wrapped around it like a warm blanket, and it let out a soft whimper of relief. Mom knelt down, her hands gently brushing through the damp fur. She murmured, her heart aching for the fragile being before her. The dog stepped back, sniffing out this new environment, its nose quivering with curiosity despite clearly being on edge. It cautiously explored, moving to the corner of the living room, its tail tucked tightly between its legs. "Let's give it some space," Tom suggested, his tone calming, holding back his own desire to rush to the dog's side. Mom quickly laid out some towels and gave the dog a bowl of water. It approached cautiously, taking small sips, its eyes darting around as if it feared danger lurked behind every corner of the room. The family mused over what might have happened. Was it lost? Abandoned? They could feel its tension, and with it came a wave of questions. Each new sip of water seemed to ease its burden just a little, but they all wondered, who would leave such a loyal companion out in the cold? Dad asked, pulling out his phone. But in that moment, a startling realization struck them, an incredible moment that would bind their lives together forever. Just as Dad dialed, the dog paused. It turned suddenly, its ears perked up as though listening intently. Then came a loud thud at the door. It was as if a bomb had gone off, the sudden loudness slicing through the room's tranquility. The dog barked defensively, the bravery surging through its tiny frame, and raced toward the door. With a shared glance, the family reconvened around the entrance, concern lingering like shadows in the corners of their minds. What awaited them now? As Dad slowly opened the door, the scene that unfolded sent electric waves of shock through the Thornton family. Standing there, silhouetted against the fading evening light, was a woman frantic, disheveled, and breathless. She exclaimed, her voice hoarse and desperate as she peered inside. The family's eyes widened. Was this woman the dog's owner? Mom responded, her heart pounding in sync with the woman's increasing anxiety. The dog, pulling at the leash of newfound loyalty, bolted to the door, recognizing the voice it had longed for, and it tugged against Mom's grasp. In a breathtaking rush, it bounded forward, nearly knocking the woman over with excitement. The woman gasped, kneeling down, her eyes filled with sheer relief as she wrapped her arms around the little creature. "I thought I lost you." The dog showered her with licks that seemed to echo its own relief, tail wagging furiously in response. The family watched, a mix of emotions swirling in the air. On one hand, they felt joyful for the reunion, for the happiness that was unfolding right in front of them. But on the other came the pangs of sadness. Just like that, the dog would disappear back into the night. They had barely grasped the beauty of this moment, and here it was slipping away. Dad asked, breaking the heavy silence that lingered as the woman stroked the dog's head, her eyes brimming with tears. "I was staying at a friend's house," she began, her voice shaky, "and he must have bolted the moment I opened the door. I've been running around for hours calling for him." Mom smiled gently, feeling the weight of the woman's words, the emotion in the air heavy and palpable. Just then, a shiver of connection sparked in the room, as if the family had unwittingly become part of this remarkable journey. They shared in the joy of reunion while grappling with the contemplation of what it means to truly belong, to both a home and to each other. But to the woman, it was as if she had found a part of herself she thought she had lost forever. She knelt there in the doorway, cradling her dog, both caught in the gravity of the moment. "I can't believe you found him," she whispered, glancing up at the Thornton family in awe. "You brought him back to me." Lily, unable to hide her own tears, perched next to her mother, reaching out to touch the dog one last time. "I'm so glad he's home." The tenderness in the air hinted at their understanding, a shared recognition of love that needed no words. Life, wild and unpredictable, had delivered them a surprise. In that fleeting moment, their own home felt somehow more complete, enriched by the essence of compassion and connection that had just unfolded. As the woman stood to leave, the dog nestled into her arms, the night wrapped around them like a soothing embrace. The Thornton family exchanged glances, hearts pounding in synchronization, tethered now to a moment and a life that would bond them in ways they could hardly fathom. "Goodbye, little buddy," Tom whispered, a lump forming in his throat. The door closed softly behind them. The echoes of barks faded into the sacred quiet of the home. Silence settled back around the Thornton family like a shroud, but it was a different silence, thick with the weight of what they had witnessed. And at that moment, they all stood changed. Unseen threads wove through every heart in the room, binding them to not just their own lives, but to the lives they had touched, the bittersweet beauty of connection that reminded them all. Even in the darkest of nights, love has a way of finding its way home. It was one of those chilly evenings when the world takes on a magical glow. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in dramatic shades of pink and orange. As the Thornton family settled in for a cozy night, the aroma of baked pasta wafted through their home, filling every corner with warmth. Laughter echoed in the kitchen while they prepped for dinner, surrounded by the faint buzz of the television in the background. But just as they gathered around the table, an unexpected sound shattered the serene atmosphere, a frantic scratching, desperate and imploring. The noise broke through the chatter like a siren in the night, and they all paused, eyebrows raised. Lily, the curious 7-year-old, asked, her bright eyes wide with surprise. "I don't know," Tom, her 12-year-old brother, replied, glancing nervously towards the door. "No way," Dad chuckled, though he too felt a twinge of unease. With shared glances and tentative steps, the family moved toward the front door, the sound growing louder, more urgent. Each deliberate footfall felt like a countdown to an uncertain reveal. Dad opened the door, and the sight that greeted them sent shockwaves through the family. There, standing on the doorstep, was a small, scruffy dog. Its fur was matted and drenched from the rain, and it trembled with a mix of fear and urgency. The moment its big, soulful eyes met theirs, the house fell silent. It lifted a single paw as if pleading for their help. Mom whispered, crouching down to the dog's level. The little creature seemed to sense their compassion. It lunged forward, a little tail wagging ever so slightly, though the tension in its body was palpable. In a matter of seconds, it had transformed from a scared stray into a flicker of hope in the Thornton household. "I think he's cold," Lily breathed, her heart bursting with sympathy. She stepped forward, instinctively reaching out. The moment her warm hand met the dog's wet fur, a wave of connection washed over them both. "We can't just leave him out here. He needs shelter," Dad replied, his voice calm but resolute. The decision felt heavy, but he sensed it was the right one. With gentle encouragement and coaxing words, they welcomed the dog inside. The warmth of the kitchen enveloped him like a comforting embrace, easing the tension in his paws. He sniffed around, his small body quivering but slowly coming alive with each new smell of home. Mom hurried off to grab some towels, her heart racing as she dried the trembling creature. "Let's get you warm," she said, a soft smile spreading across her face. The dog let out a soft whine, following her as closely as he could, each step a tiny leap of trust. While Lily fawned over him, brushing her fingers through his fur, Tom sat on the couch, his eyebrows furrowing. He glanced toward his parents, his tone shifting to worry. "Then we'll find them," Dad assured, maintaining a firm but gentle demeanor. His eyes softened as he watched Lily cradle the dog in her arms, the two of them already forming an inseparable bond. Lily asked, her voice breathy with excitement and concern. Dad knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. Sometimes dogs run away when they're scared or when they're not being treated well, but sometimes they just need to find a safe place. As they settled in for dinner, the little dog lay curled in a blanket at their feet, his breathing calming to match the rhythm of family life. It was a surreal scene, like a puzzle piece fitting perfectly into their hearts. However, as they dined, an unsettling thought brewed in the back of Tom's mind. He said, breaking the warm atmosphere. Mom nodded thoughtfully, her brows furrowed. "You're right, Tom, we should check for a collar next." After dinner, while Lily entertained the dog with treats and gentle pets, Tom held the dog to examine its collar. But there was no identification, just a dull tag that jingled softly. Disappointment loomed as the atmosphere shifted from joy to concern. "We've got to call the shelter," Mom suggested, her resolve firm. But just as she made the call, the little dog perked up, ears standing alert as if it could sense something coming. Its eyes darted to the window, suddenly wide with anxiety. A low growl escaped its throat, the only warning before the doorbell rang. Everyone froze, a small fear gripped their hearts. Tom whispered. "I don't know," Dad answered, moving cautiously toward the door. As he opened it with a slight creak, a woman stood there, wet and frantic, the fear clear on her face. She was panting, hair sticking to her forehead. She gasped, looking searchingly around the foyer. The dog, sensing her presence, bolted past Dad and threw itself into her waiting arms, tail wagging furiously. The room erupted with shock, emotions shifted in an instant. The woman scooped the scruffy dog close, tears brimming in her eyes. A sigh of profound relief escaped her lips as she hugged him tightly, their reunion sending ripples of warmth through the room. The Thornton family exchanged glances, each heart swelling with a complex blend of happiness and bittersweet sadness. They had hoped to keep him just a bit longer, but the joy of this reunion was overwhelming. Mom inquired, stepping forward cautiously. The woman exclaimed, wiping her tears. "I was watching him for a friend, and he ran away the moment I opened the door. I was about to go crazy worrying about him." As the woman spoke, the dog wriggled free from her embrace, tail wagging happily, searching for his new friends. There was a lightness in the air, a raw connection shared between a family that had saved a scared little being and a devoted owner reunited against all odds. Tom squared his shoulders, a new idea forming in his mind, heart still racing. "His name is Max," she said, beaming down at the dog. With excitement swirling, the family gathered around, heartened by the sight of this joyful reunion. Lily squeaked, her eyes sparkling like the night sky. It felt a little strange, but the family sensed they had become part of a larger story. A story that thrived on connections, a story woven through laughter, heartache, and love found in the most unpredictable places. "Of course, I could use the company," the woman replied, her warmth spreading a sense of belonging in the chill of the autumn night. The family slipped on their jackets, stepping out into the cool air, where the moon hung like a guardian in the sky. As they walked through the neighborhood, they shared stories about Max's brave little adventure. The Torringtons listened intently while the woman spoke of her guilt for losing him, her fears entwined with gratitude. At last, they reached her doorstep, their journey together feeling like a tapestry of shared experience. Max, now free and vibrant, darted between their legs in playful loops. The door opened, and with a final farewell hug, the woman thanked them one last time, her heart lightened by the warmth of newfound friendships. "Take care of him," Tom said, his tone earnest, as if to remind her of the bond they had just experienced together. With a glimmer of hope, they all exchanged their final smiles and waves before the door closed softly behind them, echoing the impact of what had just happened. Walking back home, the Thornton family felt a shift in the evening air. They had witnessed not just the reunion of a lost pup and its owner, but the power of empathy, trust, and connection. "That was amazing," Lily squealed, her voice bubbling with joy. "Yes, we did," Dad replied, his heart swelling with pride. As they re-entered the warmth of their home, a new warmth filled their hearts, resonating with joyous echoes and intertwined stories. The adventure they'd shared, though brief, had left an imprint on their souls, a reminder that kindness makes us all a little more human, binding lives together in the most surprising ways. In that moment, as the door clicked shut behind them, they knew they had been part of something truly special, a shared connection that still hung in the air long after their shadows vanished into the glow of their home. A lonely autumn evening deepened into the quiet of dusk, shadows stretching over the Thornton household like a soft blanket. Inside, the family bustled around the kitchen, the smell of comfort food wafting through the air as laughter broke the stillness of the night. Dad was tossing a salad while Tom set the table. Lily, the youngest, was dancing in the living room, her innocent giggles a melody that made everything feel right in the world. But just as they settled down for dinner, a sharp, desperate scratching sound clawed at the door. It was a noise unlike any they'd heard before, a frantic plea piercing the warm enclosure of their home. Tom asked, his brow furrowing. "Maybe it's just the wind," Dad replied, but his voice was laced with uncertainty. Before anyone could speak another word, the noise came again, louder and more urgent, a call for aid that tugged at their hearts. "Let's check it out," Mom said, her voice steady, though a flicker of concern danced behind her eyes. They gathered together, a small unit of bravery, and opened the door. What they found stunned them into silence. Standing on the doorstep was a small, bedraggled dog, its fur soaking wet, covered in dirt and leaves. Its big, brown eyes stared back at them with pure desperation, like it had traveled miles in search of safety. "Oh my God," whispered Lily, her heart racing as she took a step closer. The little creature shifted uneasily, tail tucked between its legs. It whined softly, looking from one family member to another, and then lifted a paw as if it were asking for help. "Hey there, buddy," Dad said softly, kneeling down, his voice soothing. "It's okay." Mom took a hesitant step forward, the warmth of her heart overriding her caution. "He must be freezing," she noted as she crouched down to the dog's eye level. The dog seemed to sense the kindness in her voice, inching forward just enough to cross the threshold. They ushered him in, careful not to overwhelm him, offering soft reassurances. Once inside, the little dog explored cautiously, sniffing the cozy corners of their home, as if assessing the safety it had just stumbled upon. The family's hearts ached for him. They knew the world outside could be harsh. "Let's get him a towel," Mom said, her voice a blend of urgency and compassion. She hurried off to find something warm and dry, while Lily knelt on the floor, extending her hand gently towards their unexpected guest. The dog sniffed at her fingers, its body trembling, but slowly it began to trust. As he approached her, Lily felt an overwhelming sense of connection, as if they were speaking the same unspoken language of love and fear. She asked softly, her spirit radiating warmth. The little dog's ears perked up at the sound of her voice, understanding her sincerity even through the layers of stress. Mom returned with a soft towel, gently wrapping it around the dog. "We'll take care of you," she promised. Slowly the dog relaxed, the blanket absorbing not just the chill in its bones, but also the gentleness of this brand new family. But as they began to settle in, a wave of seriousness washed over Tom. He asked, crossing his arms, worry spilling out. Mom nodded, a thoughtful frown crossing her face. "You're right, we can't just keep him." Dad pulled out his phone. Let's check for a collar. If he has one, we can call his owner, he suggested, and together they inspected the little dog, whose nerves were slowly giving way to curiosity about his new surroundings. But the collar was bare, no tags, no identification, just a plain, worn band around his neck. Tom felt his heart sink. He asked, glancing up at his parents, both of whom looked equally uncertain. Mom sighed. Let's give him some food and water. They filled a bowl, and with tentative steps the dog approached, sniffing the offerings before finally diving in, each bite a step toward trust. As the family watched, their hearts began to swell with affection. But just as the atmosphere lightened, the dog abruptly froze, ears perked up, eyes glimmering with raw fear as he looked toward the door. A loud bang shook the house, and the dog let out a growl deep and primal. The family turned. Who could that possibly be? With shared nerves, Dad opened the door. Standing there in the dim light was a woman, soaked and frantic, her voice trembling with urgency. She gasped, eyes wide, searching the faces of the Thornton family. In that moment, time slowed, the air charged with emotion. The dog bolted to the door, leaping into her arms, relief flooding through the room like a healing balm. She cried, clutching him tightly to her chest. The Thornton family, still in shock, exchanged glances, each of them feeling a complex wave of emotions. They had only just met the little creature, yet it felt like a bond had formed, a silent understanding of the fears and triumphs faced in the darkest moments. Mom managed to say, stepping into the doorway, a mix of joy and melancholy swirling in her chest. Yes, his name is Max, the woman explained, tears of relief spilling down her cheeks. He ran away when I was moving to a new apartment. Well, we took care of him while he was lost, Dad said, his voice gentle, enveloping the moment in warmth. The woman's eyes shimmered with gratitude. I can't thank you enough. As they stood there in the doorway, something remarkable happened. Max wriggled free from her embrace and returned to the Thornton family, his tail wagging, as if to say goodbye to the warmth of the home he'd just discovered. Lily knelt down, her heart breaking at the thought of their newfound friend leaving. I'll miss you, Max, she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. She blurted out, her voice filled with a raw desperation that struck a chord within them all. The woman paused, her brow furrowing for a moment. Of course, I'd love the company, she said, her smile infectious. With a newfound sense of purpose, the family bundled up and stepped outside, instinctively falling into step beside the woman. The night air whirled around them, cool and comforting, as Max darted between each person's side, thrilled to be the center of attention. As they walked, the woman shared stories about Max's habits, how he loved to chew on the couch, how he would chase shadows in the yard, and how he was always right by her side during her toughest days. Each story painted a vivid picture of love and companionship, something every one of them could relate to. Tom, feeling emboldened, finally spoke up. What do you think happened to him? Do you think he was scared? The woman nodded, her voice thoughtful. Yeah, I think he was scared to be alone. Each step deepened the bond forming between the family and this woman, weaving their lives together through shared experiences and the simple act of kindness. They laughed and cried as they moved, the lines between stranger and friend blurring into something new. Soon they reached the woman's apartment, a modest building that looked unassuming. But as they stood under the flickering light, watching Max leap joyfully at the door, hearts filled with delight, a sudden understanding washed over them. Dad said, glancing at the group. Yeah, Tom agreed, his voice firm with realization. As they waved goodbye, the Thornton family felt lighter, connected by something deeper than mere chance. They had been part of Max's story, a story of resilience, trust, and the warmth of coming home. As they turned to walk back to their own front door, the world around them felt a bit brighter. They had witnessed the fragile ties that bind us all and experienced firsthand the unyielding spirit of kindness. Each moment spent together became a thread woven into their lives, reminding them that even through darkness, light always found a way to shine through. And although they had to say goodbye to Max, they felt as if a piece of his spirit would always linger within their hearts, a joyful reminder of the remarkable bonds that can form when you least expect it. As they closed their door behind them, laughter bubbled up, filling their home once more. The family gathered around the dinner table, now richer in spirit, and shared stories of their day. Each laugh, each smile, resonated like a gentle promise. Kindness is never wasted, for it builds connections that can change lives forever, one small act at a time. It was a quiet evening in the Johnson household, the kind where the world outside fades into hushed tones and shadows play tricks on the walls. Inside, the comforting clatter of dinner preparations filled the air. The smell of roasted chicken mingled with fresh herbs, wrapping the family in an atmosphere of warmth and safety. Laughter echoed as Emily, the youngest, spun around the kitchen, her ponytail swinging with each leap of joy. Then came the sound that sliced through their bubble, a sharp, frenzied scratching at the door. It was a sound that resonated with urgency, pulling everyone from their cozy moment into a whirlpool of curiosity and concern. Emily's voice trembled with excitement and a hint of fear. Her older brother Alex joked, but his tone faltered as he glanced toward the door, uncertainty creeping into his eyes. "Let's find out," Dad said, setting down the spoon, his brow furrowed with intrigue. They gathered around the door, heartbeats rising in sync with the scratching. Dad reached for the doorknob, and with a cautious twist, he opened it. The sight before them knocked the wind out of their lungs and sent shockwaves of astonishment through the family. Standing on the doorstep was a small dog. It looked lost and terrified, fur matted and soaked from the rain. Its eyes were wide, filled with an almost pleading hope. The moment it saw them, the scratching turned into an urgent whine, and it cowered back, tail tucked, as if unsure whether to run or seek refuge. "Oh my goodness," Mom gasped, stepping forward instinctively. The dog took a tentative step forward, sizing them up, still trembling. Emily couldn't hold back. She cried, already picturing adventures together, envisioning a new friend to share her love with. "Wait," Alex interjected, his tone serious. "What if someone's looking for him?" Mom knelt down, her heart overflowing with compassion. "Maybe he's lost." As they coaxed the small creature inside with soft words and gentle motions, a wave of relief settled over him. The warmth of the house enveloped him, overshadowing the fear he had carried for who knows how long. They dried him with a towel, his fur still damp but no longer dripping. He looked around, curious yet cautious, stomach growling softly. "Let's get him food," Dad suggested, and the family banded together. They filled a bowl with kibble, offering it with open hearts. The moment the dog caught the scent, he dashed toward the food, devouring every morsel like it was the best meal he had ever had. Watching him eat filled them with warmth. But just as they settled into the cozy energy of having him around, a troubling thought crept into the back of Tom's mind. He asked again, the worry settling like a stone in his stomach. "We should check for a collar," Mom said, nodding toward the little dog who was now wagging his tail while licking a bit of leftover gravy from the floor. "Okay, let's do it," Dad said, kneeling beside the pup once more and examining him. But there was no collar, no tag, just a hint of dirt and a lot of confusion in his eyes. Tom asked, uncertainty hanging thick in the air. "We should at least take him to the vet in the morning to check for a microchip," Mom said. As night fell, they set up a cozy spot in the living room, laying out blankets and pillows. The dog soon curled up, drifting into a deep sleep, and the family gathered close, sharing stories about their days but with a new sense of joy. They now had a small, sacred creature to bond with. Emily's excited voice shattered the comfortable tension. Tom suggested, to which she rolled her eyes, so typical for an older brother to suggest something boring. "Let's call him Lucky. He seems like a lucky dog," Emily exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. They all murmured in agreement, the name resonating like a beacon of hope. Hours passed, and everyone slowly drifted into a peaceful slumber, wrapped in the warmth of the house and the comfort of companionship. But then, just as the world outside turned still, another noise shattered the tranquility, a shuffling, followed by a whining sob. The dog, now named Lucky, had awoken, eyes wide with anxiety, spinning in circles, looking for something lost. Mom whispered, climbing off the couch. Lucky darted toward the door and scratched at it, desperation returning in waves. Something was deeply troubling him, and the family could feel it. Tom suggested, voice trembling with concern. Mom opened the door slowly, prepared for whatever awaited them outside. The night air felt heavy, almost electric with unease. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared, a woman, drenched and disheveled, standing on the porch. She cried, her voice raw with desperation. Oh, thank God, time froze. The family stood awestruck, breathless, caught between disbelief and sorrow. Max, or Lucky as they had called him, bolted toward the woman, leaping into her arms, showering her with wet kisses. She sobbed, holding Max so tightly it looked like she might never let go. Dad asked, his heart sinking and rising all at once. Yes, the woman cried, tears of joy glistening in her eyes. I can't believe he found you, Tom breathed, the realization washing over him. The loss they had feared was real, but seeing the raw love between them softened the blow. The woman turned to the Thornton family, gratitude spilling from her. Thank you for taking care of him. Mom smiled, feeling the warmth of a stranger's gratitude as they all stood in the doorway, united in a moment that transcended words. Emily asked, eyes bright with hope. She didn't want to say goodbye so soon. A bond had formed, bringing them together in a shared connection of care. Of course, I'd love the company, said the woman, her smile breaking through the fear that had clouded her heart. With a surge of warmth, they stepped back out into the cool night air, the dreary atmosphere replaced by the lightness of hope and community. Together, they walked toward the woman's home, sharing stories about Max's little quirks, the way his tail wagged when he was excited, his fear of thunderstorms, and the way he snuggled under the blankets. Each revelation echoed with laughter and connection. As they approached the woman's apartment, the streetlights glowed like friendly stars, illuminating the bond that had formed around a small, lost dog. I never thought I'd find him, she said, glancing at Max, who was prancing around them, vibrating with joy. Emily asked, her excitement bubbling over. No, Max will be my first. He's my little buddy, she replied, her face radiant with affection. And just like that, life unfolded around them, a transformation in the mundane that illuminated the extraordinary connections created in unexpected moments. At last, they reached the woman's door. Max turned to look back at the Thornton family. His tail wagged as if to convey gratitude and promise. Thank you again for everything, the woman said, her voice trembling with sincerity. The Thornton family raised their hands in farewell, a wave both sad and triumphant. They had loved and lost in the span of a night, but they would carry this experience with them forever, knowing that they had been a part of something greater, that they had kept a light alive when the world felt dark. As they turned to leave, the warmth lingering in the air wrapped around them like a comforting embrace, their hearts filled with the beauty of what had just passed. Today was special, Emily said quietly, squeezing her brother's hand. Yeah, Tom agreed, feeling a warmth break open inside him. And with that, they walked back home, hearts buoyed by the joy of connection, eyes wide open to the possibilities that life lay ahead. They had been part of a small miracle, a poignant reminder of the strength of love in its purest form. That night, as they settled back into their cozy routine, something had changed. They had opened their doors not just to a dog, but to the profound lessons of empathy and kindness, the simple yet lasting truth that it's often in life's most unexpected moments where we discover who we truly are. And with dreams filled with exploration, friendship, and the love of a dog who had asked for help, they drifted into sleep, secure in the knowledge that sometimes the most surprising journeys lead to the most incredible places, where hearts intertwine and friendships are forged in the unlikeliest of ways. The sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows and painting the evening sky in shades of deep purple and orange. Inside the Thompson home, the aroma of homemade chili simmered on the stove, filling the air with warmth. Laughter bounced off the walls as the family gathered around the table, the sound of forks clinking against plates intermingling with light-hearted chatter. Just as they settled down, a sudden, sharp scratching at the door shattered the moment. It was a frantic sound, unlike anything they'd heard before, echoing with urgency. Mom paused mid-laugh, her smile fading. It's probably just the wind, Dad said, though a hint of concern marked his voice. Emily, the youngest, peered at her parents with wide eyes. What if it's an animal? All right, let's take a look, Dad said reluctantly, pushing his chair back with a scrape. The family shared knowing glances, the unspoken bond of curiosity drawing them toward the door. As Dad opened it, the sight that met them was heart-stopping. Standing on their porch, soaked and shivering, was a small dog. Its fur was matted and dirty, and its big brown eyes looked up at them with a mix of fear and hope. Mom gasped, her heart immediately going out to the creature. The little dog took a tentative step forward, tail tucked between its legs. Emily's voice was soft, her empathy flourishing with every shaky breath shared between them. "It looks scared," Tom, her older brother, murmured, hesitating as he knelt down. "Absolutely," Dad declared, his protective instincts kicking in. They stepped aside, allowing the trembling dog to shuffle inside. As it crossed the threshold, something shifted in the air, a palpable energy of connection, and the dog let out a soft whine, chest heaving. "Let's get him some towels and food," Mom suggested, her nurturing spirit taking charge. The family rushed around, their actions a whirlwind of urgency and care. They dried the little creature off with soft towels, fingers brushing against damp fur, and then filled a dish with kibble and set it before him. The dog hesitated, sniffing tentatively before diving in with an enthusiasm that told them how hungry he was. As the family watched, a mix of warmth and concern filled their hearts. But then, as if sensing a deeper worry, Tom asked, "What if he has an owner?" "I agree," Dad nodded, resting a hand on his son's shoulder as they gathered around the dog. But when they looked, there was nothing, just a bare neck and the faint scent of rain. A heaviness settled in the room. "After dinner, we'll see if anyone in the neighborhood knows him," Mom said, trying to lift their spirits. As the dog finished eating, he looked up at them, his tail beginning to wag, tiny bursts of trust breaking through layers of confusion and fear. "Let's give him a name," Emily said, her eyes sparkling with hope. "Lucky," Tom suggested. "Scout, like he's exploring," Emily countered, her excitement bubbling over. Mom laughed, and there was a lightness in the air as though they had woven a new thread through the fabric of their lives. But just as they settled down, a sudden noise erupted from the living room. A low growl escaped Lucky Scout as he turned, ears perked, eyes darting to the door. Dad asked, sensing the tension returning. The dog's instincts seemed to dial up, and without warning he bounded to the door, scratching with urgent insistence. "Something's out there," Tom murmured, his heart racing. "Everyone stay back," Dad commanded, opening the door slowly. But the night felt different now, charged with unspoken tension. Just beyond the threshold, the world was darker than before, shadows looming larger. Suddenly, a figure emerged, a woman, drenched and wide-eyed, clutching a small blanket. She cried, her voice trembling with urgency. The family froze. She shouted, her relief palpable as the little dog dashed toward her, yelping joyfully. Time froze for the Thompsons. In a heartbeat, emotions crashed over them. It was joyful and heart-wrenching all at once, the fear they had felt turning to disbelief as they witnessed this joyful reunion. Dad asked, stepping aside to let the woman in. She exclaimed, falling to her knees as Lucky Scout licked her face. Tears streamed down her cheeks, relief flooding her voice. The Thompsons exchanged glances, swept up in the emotion of it all. "We took care of him while you were looking," Mom said, her heart swelling with shared joy. "Thank you." The woman cried, grasping Lucky Scout tightly. The family felt an instant kinship with the woman, pressed together by the shared experience of finding, losing, and reuniting. Emily asked, her voice hopeful. She didn't want the moment to end. They were woven into this story of love and rescue. "Absolutely, I would love the company," the woman replied, her smile radiant as she processed the kindness surrounding her. Together, they stepped into the night, Lucky Scout bounding between them, joyful energy radiating from him. The air felt lighter, infused with hope. As they walked, stories flowed like the gentle breeze around them. The woman shared tales of Lucky Scout's antics, how he would dance at food time and nuzzle her hands during movie nights. "I never thought I'd find him," she said, glancing down at the exuberant pup. The Thompsons nodded, understanding the depth of love that came from a pet. Each laugh and shared experience bound them closer together, the darkness of the world outside melting away to nothing. With every step, they passed familiar street corners, each shadow now lit with laughter and warmth. "This is what it's all about," Dad said, savoring the connection forming between two families. At last, they reached the woman's apartment, a modest dwelling that felt like an oasis. As they paused at the door, Lucky Scout turned back to the Thompsons, his tail wagging furiously as if saying thank you. "Thank you for everything you've done," the woman said, her voice tinged with grateful emotion. Bringing their hands together, the Thompsons waved goodbye, hearts tender from the journey they shared. They felt the warmth of compassion lingering in the air, a promise that kindness connects lives. As they retraced their steps home, the night felt different now, stitched together with newfound hope and connection. "Today was incredible," Emily murmured, holding her brother's hand tightly. "I didn't expect to feel so connected," Tom admitted, reflecting on the evening's unfolding narrative. Arriving back at their doorstep, they lingered for a moment, letting the warmth of the experience wrap around them. "Let's always remember this," Dad said, his voice resonating with belief. "Helping others helps us grow." Inside the house, life resumed its rhythm, but something had changed in the Thompsons. They had been woven into a story larger than themselves, a bond formed not just in rescue, but in the soaring depths of empathy. Lucky Scout might have left, but his spirit remained, haunting the halls with the lessons learned and joy experienced. They had discovered that even in the darkest nights, paths of connection could light the way. As they nestled into their evening routines, laughter echoed through the halls, vivid imagery of love wrapping around them. Each heartbeat told a story, not just the one of the dog asking for help, but the call for every heart to open and embrace the unexpected moments life throws our way. And in that realization, they fell asleep, secure in the knowledge that tomorrow would bring new adventures, new connections, and endless possibilities, forever changed by the night a little dog knocked on their door. It was a crisp autumn evening, the kind that wraps around you like a snug blanket. The leaves danced to the ground in hues of amber and gold, while inside the Ramirez household, a cozy buzz filled the kitchen. The fragrant aroma of simmering tomato sauce wafted through the air, teasing taste buds and promising a delightful dinner. Laughter echoed as the family bantered over who would set the table, a spirited debate fueled by the impending feast. Then suddenly, a harsh scratching sound shattered the warm ambience. Everyone paused, forks halfway to their mouths, eyes darting toward the door. Clara, the youngest at just 8 years old, asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and trepidation. "I think it came from outside," her brother Miguel replied, concern flickering in his eyes. "Maybe it's a raccoon or something," Dad said dismissively, but there was a nervous edge to his laughter as he looked toward the door. Before anyone could react further, the scratching intensified, urgent, desperate. The family shared a glance, an unspoken agreement forming. Clara suggested, her adventurous spirit bubbling just beneath the surface. "All right, let's see what it is," Dad said, his voice steady, although a flicker of worry shone in his eyes. He approached the door, the squeak of the doorknob punctuating the building suspense. When Dad opened the door, the sight that greeted them impacted like a punch to the gut. Standing there was a small dog, drenched from the rain, fur matted and dirty. Its big, soulful eyes prompted a wave of empathy sharper than anything else in that moment. It stood there, shivering, scratching at the door as if aware of the sanctuary behind it. Clara gasped, her heart immediately swelling with compassion. Dad knelt down, reaching towards the little creature. The dog stepped back, tail tucked between its legs, eyes wide with fear. Clara pleaded, glancing at her parents. "Of course," Mom replied, her heart already melting. With a gentle coaxing, the family welcomed the dog into their home. The moment he crossed the threshold, he let out a small whine, his body language a mixture of relief and vulnerability. Clara knelt down, extending her hand toward him. "It's okay," she whispered softly. The dog approached cautiously, sniffing her hand, needing to assess if this was truly a safe haven. The transformation was gradual, but it was there, a softening, a glimmer of trust appearing in those brown eyes. Soon he was in the warmth of the cozy kitchen as Clara began to dry him with a towel. She asked, her imagination running wild with possibilities. "I don't know," Miguel said, scrunching his forehead in thought. "What about Scout?" Clara chimed in. Mom laughed, her heart swelling with love and joy. As they snuggled the dog in blankets and sat him by the stove, the comforting atmosphere of the evening began to settle once more. They filled a bowl with kibble and placed it before him. Lucky Scout didn't hesitate this time. He devoured the food, gobbling it up with the enthusiastic fervor that comes from knowing hunger. He must have been starving, Miguel commented, his earlier skepticism fading, replaced by a protective instinct. Clara bit her lip, her brows furrowing in confusion. Before anyone could respond, the kitchen door rattled. The sound turned their blood cold. Mom whispered, her tone suddenly tense. Lucky Scout's demeanor shifted too. He froze mid-bite, ears perked, turning toward the door, an uneasy growl low in his throat. "I'll check," Dad said, his heart racing. With a steadying breath, he opened the door wider. The dark twilight outside felt heavier than before, thick with unspoken tension. But there was nothing, just the rustle of leaves in the breeze. He took a step back, still uneasy. "False alarm, I guess," he said, forcing a chuckle. But as he turned back to the kitchen, the scratching sound returned, even more frantic this time. Lucky Scout began barking, prowling toward the door with urgent tenacity. Miguel asked, glancing nervously at the door. Then it hit him. A deep sense of intuition began to fill the room. He suggested, trying to grasp hold of the growing anxiety. Clara asked, drawing her knees to her chest, concern overshadowing her earlier excitement. "I think we should check," Dad said, the gravity of the situation sinking in. But when they examined the little dog, there was no collar, no identification to offer a clue about where he belonged. "I can't believe it," Clara said, tears pooling in her eyes. Mom put an arm around Clara, feeling a wave of empathy and regret. "We'll figure it out." The family settled back down, sharing stories about their own pets and silly memories. Lucky Scout curled up on the couch, drifting into a deep sleep, the rhythmic rise and fall of his chest reflecting the safety he had found in their company. But just as the laughter bubbled around the dinner table, a noise shattered the peace. A loud thud sounded at the door, causing Lucky Scout to spring awake. Miguel shouted, springing to his feet. Dad warned, opening the door cautiously, heart hammering in his chest. As the door creaked open, the sight that met them felt surreal. A woman stood there, soaked to the bone, fear dancing in her eyes. She gasped, breathless and frantic. The moment was electric. The family exchanged frightened looks. Could it be? Clara whispered, hope surging through her voice. But before anyone could speak, Lucky Scout dashed toward the woman, leaping into her arms as if he had just found his anchor in a raging storm. She cried, holding him tightly against her chest, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. In that moment, every heart present crashed together, a mixture of joy and disbelief. What had started as an adventure of compassion and loss had turned into something profound, an intertwining of lives. "I'm so sorry for holding him," Mom said, stepping closer, overwhelmed by the tides of emotions crashing around them. The woman shook her head, her gratitude shining through her tears. "Thank you so much for taking care of him." "Dogs do have a knack for that," Dad replied, letting out a nervous chuckle as he stepped forward. The family watched as the reunion unfolded, Lucky Scout wiggling with excitement, showering the woman in affection. Clara asked, her eyes glistening with hope. The bond felt too fresh, too beautiful to sever just yet. "Of course, I'd love the company," the woman replied, her heart swelling with appreciation for the family that had cared for her pup. With a collective breath, the family stepped out into the cool night air, where laughter and joy mingled. The streets were softened by the faint glow of street lamps, turning the evening into something magical, like a scene out of a movie. As they walked, stories flowed, merging their lives in unexpected ways. The woman shared giggles about Lucky Scout's antics, how he chased after squirrels and learned how to sit for treats. Clara chimed in, recounting tales of her own pets, the seamless conversations blossoming with every shared laugh. The woman asked as Lucky Scout dashed around playfully, wagging his tail like a little flag. Miguel said, smiling as the dog chased his shadow. Soon they arrived at the woman's home, a cozy apartment that radiated warmth. Their laughter echoed as they reached her doorstep, an unspoken promise forming in the air. "I can't thank you enough for your kindness," the woman said, her voice choked with emotion. As they looked down at Lucky Scout, who had settled into a comfortable curl at her feet, they felt the weight of something profound pass between them. This small dog, amidst the chaos of the night, had brought them together, weaving their stories into one shared narrative. "Let's keep in touch," Mom suggested, her heart aglow with the connections formed. The woman replied, exchanging phone numbers. With one last wave, the families parted ways, Lucky Scout saying goodbye with a happy bark. The Thompsons walked home, hearts warm, sharing a lingering joy that seemed to hang in the cool night air. "I never expected tonight to be so special," Dad admitted, reflecting on everything that had transpired. "I felt so much happiness," Clara chimed in, her voice soft but enthusiastic. "That's the thing about kindness," Miguel added thoughtfully. As they stepped back into their cozy home, the laughter faded into a soft, comforting silence. But the echoes of the night remained a reminder of how unexpected moments can shape lives in extraordinary ways. The family gathered around their table, hearts fuller than before and understanding deeper. They had not just saved a dog, they had experienced the beauty of connection, compassion, and the inevitable joy that comes from reaching out. That night, as the stars twinkled outside, they nestled into their beds, drifting into sleep with dreams filled with newfound bonds and the warmth of Lucky Scout's spirit lingering in their hearts, knowing that in life, love always finds a way to bridge distances and unite souls. It was a chilly evening, and the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the neighborhood. Inside the Martinez home, warmth wrapped around the family like a blanket. The aroma of homemade tamales filled the air, creating a sense of comfort amidst the hustle and bustle of daily life. Laughter echoed off the walls as siblings Marco and Sophia playfully bickered over who would set the table. Then, without warning, a muffled scratching sound emerged, breaking through the familiar rhythm of family life. The noise grew persistent, frantic. Mom paused, looking up from the stove with furrowed brows. She asked, concern prickling her voice. "I think it's outside," Marco replied, standing up to listen more closely. Before anyone could debate, the scratching intensified, followed by a soft whine that tugged at their hearts. Sophia suggested, eyes wide with both curiosity and apprehension. "All right, let's see what it is," Dad said, his voice firm yet gentle. He wiped his hands on a towel and walked toward the door, curiosity mixed with a hint of trepidation. As he opened the door, the sight that greeted the family was nothing short of astonishing. Standing there, shivering in the cold, was a small golden retriever. Its fur was damp, matted, and its eyes showed pure desperation. It took a tentative step forward, glancing back over its shoulder as if it expected danger to follow at any moment. Mom exclaimed, kneeling down to get a better look. The dog whined softly, lifting a paw as though asking for help, hope shimmering in those trusting eyes. Marco asked, stepping forward hesitantly. The family's hearts swelled with concern, and all thoughts of dinner flew from their minds. Sophia pleaded, already imagining a life filled with the joy this furry creature could bring. "I think we need to bring him in," Dad said, glancing cautiously at the dog. Together, the family gently coaxed the dog inside. As he crossed the threshold, he let out a small sigh as if he had found a safe haven. The warmth of the house wrapped around him, melting away the fear that clung to him like the rainwater soaking his fur. Mom hurried to get towels while Marco filled a bowl with water. They set the bowl down before the trembling dog, who approached it slowly, as though unsure if he could trust this new place, this new family. "Look, he's thirsty," Sophia observed, watching with wide eyes as the dog lapped at the water eagerly. As the family gathered around, the atmosphere shifted from concern to warmth. They began to dry the dog off gently, wrapping him in a blanket while sharing comforting words, forging a bond with every passing moment. Marco asked, the excitement bubbling up inside him. Sophia suggested, her tone brightening the room. "Or Sparky, he's full of energy," Marco chimed in. "Maybe lucky since he found us," Mom said, smiling. They all agreed, the name resonating with the spirit of hope that filled the air. As they settled in, Lucky grew comfortable, nuzzling against Sophia, who giggled, scratching behind his ears. Dad asked, a serious note creeping into his voice. Marco responded, glancing at Lucky, his heart pulling in two directions. "Let's give him some time," Mom suggested gently. Just then, a loud bang echoed from the door, a crash that startled everyone. Lucky bolted upright, barking furiously as he darted toward the door, instinct kicking in. Sophia squeaked, wide-eyed with fright. "I'll check it out," Dad said, his voice steady, but the tension in his body was palpable. As he opened the door, a gust of cold air rushed in, almost as if the night itself held its breath. Outside stood a man, drenched and breathless, his eyes wide with urgency. "Please," he gasped, his voice trembling. Marco's heart raced as he looked back over his shoulder at Lucky, who had calmed down, intrigued by the newcomer. Dad asked, stepping aside, allowing the man to see Lucky, who had frozen, staring back at the stranger with innocent curiosity. "Yes, that's him." The words hung in the air, and a wave of shock washed over the Martinez family. How could this man know the dog's name? Lucky dashed to the door, barking excitedly, his tail wagging like a flag of joyous reunion. The man crouched down, tears in his eyes. "Oh, thank goodness," he cried, wrapping his arms around the golden retriever, clearly overcome with emotion. The family stood unsure, suddenly feeling like intruders in a moment that had shifted gears wildly. Mom ventured, glancing back and forth between Lucky and the stranger. "Yes, I'm his owner," the man said, voice choking with relief. "I was on my way home. He must have slipped out when I opened the door. I've been searching for hours, driving through the rain, knocking on doors." Marco exchanged glances with Sophia, a mix of sadness and understanding washing over them. They had genuinely bonded with Lucky in a short time, and now he was going back to his real home. "Thank you so much for taking care of him," the man said, his voice steadier now. "Of course," Dad replied, taking a step closer. But as Lucky nuzzled into the man, something shifted in the air. The family felt the energy thrumming, an unspoken bond formed over lost and found, hope and love. Then from the corner of Marco's eye, something moved. A shadow flickered near the gate. Before he could react, a glint of metal caught his attention, something that shone menacingly in the dim light. Marco suddenly shouted, pointing toward the gate. The man turned sharply, eyes widening as he glanced outside. Lucky trained his focus on the gate as well, sensing the tension building again. The family could see a figure lurking beyond the fence, half hidden in the darkness, tension pooling in the pit of their stomachs. Sophia whispered, feeling the unease crawl up her spine. Dad commanded, instinctively stepping forward, positioning his body between the doorway and the unknown threat. The man yelled, his voice carrying authority mingled with uncertainty. The figure shifted suddenly, revealing a face that looked familiar to Marco. It was someone from the neighborhood, a boy named Jake, known for causing trouble. Jake sneered, stepping forward, hands shoved deep into his pockets. "I'm just looking for my dog," the man replied defensively, uncertainty lining his face. Jake mocked, a cruel edge sharpening his tone. Without warning, he threw something into the air, an object that glinted as it arced towards Lucky. Marco shouted, lunging forward as though he could reach Lucky in time. The dog barked, confusion clouding his eyes. The object landed with a thud in their yard, a packet, bouncing across the grass, spilling out what looked like treats, though the sinister smile on Jake's face suggested something far more detrimental. He laughed, his voice filled with mirthful malice. In that moment, everything shifted. The laughter from earlier faded, replaced by an undercurrent of fear and uncertainty. The night felt heavy with tension, the shadows closing in as the adults instinctively pushed closer together. The man yelled, stepping protectively toward Lucky, whose confusion turned to fear. "If you want your dog, you're gonna have to make sure he wants to stay with you," Jake taunted, smirking as he took a step closer, eyes gleaming with mischief. Marco demanded, adrenaline surging through him. He felt a surge of protectiveness for Lucky, for the bond they had formed in just one evening. But Jake simply laughed, growing bolder, knowing he held the power at that moment. The atmosphere felt electric, the air charged with unspoken tension. Jake's laughter echoed as the family shared worried glances, panic rising in the pit of their stomachs. And in that split second, the moment where everything balanced on a knife's edge, fury mixed with fear. Would they protect Lucky at all costs? Would they stand together as a family to defend what they had just found? As Lucky stepped cautiously towards the spilled treats, uncertainty clouding his instincts, the weight of the night hung heavily around them like a storm ready to break. Dad shouted, heart racing, stepping forward in defiance, determined to stand between Lucky and Jake's growing menace. But even as they moved to confront this threat, a low growl rumbled up from Lucky's chest. a spark igniting in the sanctuary of his newfound home. The entire scene teetered on the brink of chaos, tension electrifying every breath, ready to explode into drama that would change everything. In that precise moment, the door behind them creaked ominously, revealing yet another shadow in the chaos about to unfold. And just like that, the night shifted, plunging them all into a whirlwind of uncertainty, danger, and unexpected revelations, all centered around a little golden retriever who had asked for help at a family's door.